Breaking news. Russian influence in Ukraine's Orthodox churches is being eradicated. Ukrainian Orthodox abbot Job Olshansky spoke in front of 50 stony parishioners on a recent Sunday, arguing for the adoption of the Gregorian liturgical calendar beginning on September 1. The conflict in Ukraine has hastened a national effort to reorganize the country's religious life in a way that breaks free of the long-standing Russian influence that has shaped that history. Patriarch Kirill, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, has given his full backing to Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin's claim that Ukraine is fundamentally Russian in terms of both its land and culture. Olshansky urged his congregation to act quickly in order to protect our own, Ukrainian, spiritual identity from the aggression of the Russian world. Orthodox Ukrainians have held onto the traditional Julian calendar for hundreds of years as a symbol of their church's identity, first as a protest against the Latinization of the church by the Catholic monarchs of Western Ukraine and later as an act of defiance against the Soviet system. Recent decades, however, have linked the Julian calendar with support for Russian Orthodoxy rather than Ukrainian. As a result of the calendar change, millions of Ukrainians will be celebrating Christmas on December 25 rather than January 7 as is customary in Russia and some other Orthodox churches. By papal decree in 1582, the Western Christian world adopted a revised calendar to correct calculations of Easter, and by synod in 1924, most of the world's Eastern Orthodox churches began following it. Nearly 80% of Ukrainians consider themselves to be Orthodox Christians, but their allegiances are split between two competing denominations. There's the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which has traditionally been tied to the Moscow Patriarchate but which announced its independence from the Patriarchate in May 2022, just a few months after Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In 2019, the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople formally recognized the Ukrainian Orthodox Church as a self-governing church. The first autonomous Ukrainian church was established in 1921 and played a significant role in Ukrainian nationalism until it was dismantled by the Soviet Union, which exiled its clergy and seized its assets. The Russian Orthodox Church and its Ukrainian branch were both revitalized by Joseph Stalin in 1943. Since Russian Orthodoxy originated in Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, and its churches make up roughly one-third of the Russian-based Orthodox Church, the Moscow Patriarchate would like to maintain control over the Ukrainian Church. There are still more of its parishes registered with the government than there are in the independent church in Ukraine. However, a survey conducted in 2022 found that only 4% of Ukrainians still consider themselves to be part of the Moscow Patriarchate, and that at least 1,500 parishes have made the transition to the autonomous Orthodox Church of Ukraine. The number of Ukrainians exposed to liturgy in Ukrainian rather than Church Slavonic, a liturgical language related to Russian, has increased as a result. As a result of local and regional bans on the Russian-linked church, the state, which owns many historic church buildings, has transferred leases to the newly self-governing Orthodox Church of Ukraine. The older Ukrainian church may be outlawed if a bill currently before the Ukrainian parliament passes. Lviv banned it first, and in April, the rumored last remaining structure was demolished. According to priest Mikhailo Civic of Intercession of the Theotokos Orthodox Cathedral, this is one of the many reasons why Russia must exert such tight control over its church. There may be some pro-Russians in Lviv, but they keep to themselves. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church's church population is growing rapidly. Sacred Resurrection in March of last year, dozens of churches in Lviv made the transition to the independent church, including New Athos Monastery, over which Olshansky presides. During a meeting of about 20 Ukrainian Orthodox Moscow Patriarchate clergy a few weeks after the full-scale invasion, Olshansky said he was one of only 2 priests to condemn Russia's actions. Olshansky was hired in 2019 to assist Metropolitan Filaret of Lviv and Galicia. Lviv has long been considered the spiritual home of Ukrainian nationalism. Olshansky remarked, "They said the Americans are dropping bombs on us, and Russia is innocent. When I heard that my relatives in the Irpin and Bucha areas were being targeted by bombing, I knew I could no longer continue working with these people. Due to the ongoing legal battle with the city, a Filare representative declined to comment on the number of parishes making the switch. According to multiple diocese employees, laypeople in Lviv who prefer the traditional Ukrainian church are holding liturgies in their apartments. Several members of Kyiv's Ukrainian Orthodox, formerly Moscow Patriarchate, Church expressed to Religion News Service their support for the Ukrainian armed forces and their hope that their leaders would issue stronger condemnations of Russian aggression. In spite of being unfairly persecuted, the leaders of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church have repeatedly stated their opposition to the Russian invasion. It didn't take long for Kyiv's Metropolitan, Onufry, to label the invasion a disaster, and ministers in Lviv were among the first to stop honoring Moscow's Patriarch Kirill. However, several members of the clergy who were found to have assisted Russian soldiers or to have justified the Russian invasion were arrested and convicted by the state. The government's cancellation of the lease at the Monastery of the Caves, a holy site in Slavic Orthodoxy founded in 1051, was upheld by a Kyiv court earlier this month. Ukrainian Orthodox monks, clergy, and their supporters have been fighting against being forced to vacate the property and hand it over to a separate church. The conflict with the independent church is based on nationalist rather than religious lines. Metropolitan of Borispol and Chancellor of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church Vladkia Anthony told RNS in a previous interview. They are fighting against their own kind, their spiritual foundations, he said. As the slogan goes, we are not asking for any privileges, just asking to exist in a democratic state. Holy Resurrection parishioner Ludmila Ivanova, 55, claims she left the Russian Orthodox Church because it condoned the killing of Ukrainians. Websites like Russian Media Monitor feature clergy from Russia promoting a genocide of Ukrainians on an Orthodox television network. Not good at all. Russians don't think critically. It's because they don't think, she said. Whatever the priest tells them to do, they go along with it. We put up a fight when Russian priests assumed we wouldn't. Russian missiles routinely hit residential buildings, killing civilians in Lviv, despite the city being hundreds of miles from the front lines and close to the border with Poland. More than 100 buildings were damaged and 3 people were killed in the most recent attack on Tuesday, August 15.